Welcome back to my animal education series. Today we're talking with my new friends down in the Bahamas and the Ardastra Gardens and Wildlife Conservation Center. I actually had the opportunity to visit this place in person when I visited the Bahamas back in 2014, and it was super cool to visit this facility, and it was even better to be able to work with them to do this virtual interview. Based on what I was able to find while reading for this video, there's a lot of different boa species and different subspecies that are found in the Bahamas. Do you mind telling us what some of these boa species are?
So here in the Bahamas, we have various species of boas. We have the Bahamian boa, and we have three species. One can be found in the northern Bahamas in the Little Bahama Bank, and there's various subspecies there like the Abaco boa. Then, of course, the Greater Bahama Bank, which includes the Central Bahamas, and here you can find various subspecies such as the New Providence boa, like Lily here that I'm holding, Andrus boa. And then we have the boas that are located in the Southern Bahamas. It's one more species, and those guys can be found typically on Inagua. There's also a Turks and Caicos boa, although Turks and Caicos is not in the Bahamas, it's very close in the south. So they are also included in the Bahamian boas. Now we also have a very small boa called the Pygmy Boa, and a very special one that was recently discovered called the Conception Island Silver Boa.
The various subspecies of boas seem to only be found on an island or two. Is there any research to determine how these boas got to these islands and when they started to diverge into their own subspecies?
So it's actually very hard to determine when exactly these boas got to the Bahamas and how. However, based on history, we know that they had natives, the Arawaks and Lucayans that inhabited the Bahamas, so they could have been around from there. Now, in terms of getting to other islands and spreading throughout the Bahamas, I think one big explanation is urbanization. I think as we humans, we move from island to island, via ships, stuff like that. These guys, they tagged along and they joined the journey and they moved to some of the other islands. It can also be a food source. When the pirates were very rampant in the Bahamas, they would go from island to island. They would actually let off a few different animals onto these islands like goats and sheep and chickens so that when they come back, they can have something to eat. The European settlers also introduced rats, so that can be the start as well because that's when the major food source was introduced to the Bahamas. So if a rat was stowed away on a ship and somehow a snake got onto the ship because of the rat, then that snake would have then been transported to another island in the Bahamas. So I'm thinking that's probably where it all began.
Typically, animals that are found on islands are generally smaller than their mainland relatives. So how do these boa species, other than the Pygmy boa, size up to other mainland species?
So yes, oftentimes island species are definitely smaller, and it could be due to the availability of prey and a food source that's around. But when compared to other boas in the world, Bahamian boas are pretty average in size. Typical boas, they usually get from about 6 to 12 feet. Our Bahamian boas, they usually get average about 6 to 8 feet, with the females getting much larger than the males too. However, with snakes, they actually never stop growing. It only slows down as they get older. The biggest I've personally seen of a Bahamian boa is about 10 feet.
With the Pygmy boas, do they typically eat smaller food items than the larger boas, resulting in their smaller size?
So yes, Bahamian Pygmy boas, like this very little guy right here, they feed mostly on small and no lizards. As you can see, it's not too big, so it's not a lot of animals that they can actually fit inside of them, but they're very specialized in hunting lizards. In fact, if you were to look at the base of the tail here, all right, sometimes the tip of the tail there is either black or you see this one is yellow because he's a bit younger, but they actually use that to lure prey. So they would wiggle it back and forth that looks like a worm, and they would then prey on the unsuspecting animal. So pretty cool. They also have some other special adaptations. They can voluntarily bleed from their eyes, and that's used as a defense mechanism to deter animals that may be trying to eat it. And they have another cool feature as well. When they get afraid sometimes or they feel threatened, they would ball up into a small tight ball, and that makes it harder for animals that may be trying to eat them. Now, when they're younger, they tend to have this pattern, and then the pattern will fade away as they get older.
And what do the larger boa species typically feed on?
So our larger Bahamian boas, like Lily here, typically when they're juveniles, they would feed on anoles and frogs. However, once they start to reach adulthood, they would feed mostly on rats, birds. They even feed on chickens of farmers, so they've gotten the name fowl snake because of that as well. But definitely rats tend to be their favorite once they reach adulthood.
Not only do the Bahamas have multiple species of boas and pygmy boas, but they're also home to many other snake species. Do you mind telling us what some of those other species are?
Yeah, so other than the typical Bahamian boas and other boa species that you find here in the Bahamas, like the pygmy boas, we have some other species as well, such as the Bahamian brown racer. We also have blind snakes, different species of blind snakes, and we have an invasive species called the red rat corn snake. And these guys have probably been brought over due to the pet trade. People have them as pets. They don't do a good job of containing them. They get out into the wild. Or when we import trees to beautify these nice hotels and resorts, a lot of times there's animals inside, and when they get here, they get out into the ecosystem and they start to reproduce.
Racers are typically incredibly fast species of snakes. So what do these snakes feed on in the Bahamas?
So yes, our Bahamian brown racers are really fast, hence the name racer, and we like to refer to them as a typical garden snake. But typically they feed on anole lizards. They would also feed on frogs and smaller bird species sometimes. Or perhaps if they come across a nest of little baby mice, they can also feed on those as well. But typically their diet tends to be mostly anoles and frogs.
And what kind of prey items are the blind snakes eating?
So here in the Bahamas, we have 5 species of blind snakes. 2 are actually endemic. They can only be found here. 2 are native, and we have 1 introduced species. Now these guys, most of the time they prefer to live underground or in loose soil. So because of that, they feed mostly on invertebrates with a specialty in ants and termites.
Are there any snakes that are native to the Bahamas that are considered threatened or endangered by the IUCN? And if so, what species are they?
Yeah, so due to some of our species being either threatened or endangered, the Bahamian government has implemented a few things to try to protect some of our local species. So like the Bahamian boa here is actually illegal to have them as a pet. It's illegal to kill one or to remove it out of the wild. All right, and the Conception Island or the Conception Bank silver boa is actually found in Conception Island National Park, which is a national park founded by the Bahamas National Trust. They manage the national parks here in the Bahamas, and fortunately that snake is found in the national park. So they have a few regulations there with monitoring who goes on the island.
So many people have a fear of snakes. Why is it so important to have organizations like yourself teach people and help them see and learn about snakes?
Yes, so unfortunately, many people, they have fear of snakes. And it's for various reasons. It can be due to just misconception, misunderstanding these animals. It can do to various stereotypes. The Bible have labeled snakes as the devil, and that plays a very, very important role when it comes to people's first impression of what they are and what they do and why are they here on this earth, So I think it's very, very vital for organizations like us, Ardastra Gardens, to really just bridge the gap between nature and human. When people are able to experience things for themselves, when they're able to experience things firsthand, and they're more willing to take an active role in protecting them. And that's what really we try to do here at Ardastra. We want to put people in close contact with these animals so that they can see what they are, form their own impressions of these animals, and then hopefully when they leave out of our gates, they can go with just a better understanding and wanting to actually take an active role in trying to protect them.
And finally, was there anything that I forgot to ask that you would like to share with my viewers?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to science, it's always changing. In fact, there's been a lot of scientists trying to do some work on our Bahamian boas, learning more about them, trying to understand them. So recently they were their genus name was changed from Epicrates to Chilobothrus, and this was work done by Reynolds in between 2012 and 2013. And in fact, there was a snake called the Ackland's boa or Crooked Island boa, and this was once thought to be a part or a subspecies of the Bahamian boa species. But recently Reynolds did some research and he found out that they're actually more so closely related to the Conception Island silver boa. It's seen to be a sister species of this. However, this Crooked Island boa that I'm talking about, in fact, there have been no live species found since 1975. So it's believed that they are either critically endangered or super rare to find alive.
Thank you so much to the team at Ardastra Gardens and Wildlife Conservation Center. They are super helpful for making this virtual interview possible. And again, thank you guys so much for answering all my questions. And thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. Don't forget to leave a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and as always, I will see you next time.